Welcome to the I'm Book podcast. I'm April O'Leary, and this is the YouTube version of our podcast. To get the audio version, you can hop on over to Spotify or anywhere that you consume audio podcasts. We are going to jump into some really cool content, so stay tuned for our next guest. We look forward to connecting with you, and be sure to subscribe. And to start your author adventure, hop on over to o'learypublishing.com, where you can map out the entire process and see what writing a book would look like for you. Let's get started. Welcome to the I'm Book podcast. I'm April O'Leary, your hostess and the founder of O'Leary Publishing, and I'm very excited today. I have one of our newest authors, Becky Savage, on. She is a #1 best-selling author when her book, One Choice: How 10 Seconds Can Change Your Life, released in December of 2021. She held the #1 spot in youth drug prevention for weeks and weeks on both the hardcover, the paperback, and the Kindle version. And she's here this morning to talk about her book writing process, and her story. So welcome, Becky.
Well, thanks for having me.
I'm excited.
So yeah, I know we've been trying to connect for a little bit, so this is great.
Yes, you know what? Two busy ladies going in all different directions, trying to make the world a better place is a good thing.
It's a great thing.
Becky and I got connected actually through her cousin Karen, who took a writing class from us right when COVID started in April of 2020. And Becky jumped in on that, and we've worked together since then. But I want to back up to your story and how the idea, when I speak with authors, there's always some light bulb moment or something that happens in their life, something that causes them to say, I need to write a book. And in your case, it was something that happened very dramatic, very tragic, and very unexpected, where others, have like kind of a lifelong unfolding of various things that happen. And so tell me a little bit about your family and about Nick and Jack and your story.
Sure. Well, I am a mother of 4 boys. I've been a trained nurse. I've been a nurse for over 30 years, and I'm an educator. I used to teach in a local nursing program, and I loved it. I loved teaching, and I loved working with the students. But however, one night back in June 14th of 2015, our 2 older sons, Nick and Jack, were out at graduation parties, participating in underage drinking. And at some point there, someone brought a prescription pill bottle, and there was a group of kids that decided to experiment with prescription meds. And unfortunately, my 2 older sons were part of that group, and they did not wake up the next morning. They were pronounced dead from an accidental drug overdose. So, so that's kind of where our life did a complete 360. This, was not something back then, almost 7 years ago, that we ever did talk with our kids about. We talked to our kids about drugs and alcohol and, safe sex and different things, but prescription medication abuse and misuse was not something that we talked about.
And, the tragedy of accidents that happen from a lack of education, and as a parent as well, it's hard to know everything that's out there and to stay ahead of the curve and to give your kids the best information. And, a prime example, you're a nurse, you're out there educating, and it's, your boys were active, you're a very active family, tons of hockey and sports and busy, and your lake house and, all kinds of good things surrounding your lives. And yet there's this opioid epidemic that, is out there somewhere, right? Out there. I'm pointing, like not part of my community.
Not in our neighborhoods, right?
Yeah. And
and it was something, like after this happened, I was like, how did we not know that this was going on in our communities, in our neighborhoods? And, it took us a good year to put our families, I really focused on our family, put our family first, my other 2 sons. But then, you kind of get mad, like, how do we not know about this? How, and if I didn't know about it, I know there's other families out there that don't know about it. And that's just kind of when we started to take action. We started talking about our story, Nick and Jack's story. We went to different schools here locally, and then we started getting invites across the country to go and talk. And that's just kind of where our story just kind of grassroots started. But then it just got some momentum behind it. And now we're authors of a book.
And you also started the 525 Foundation, really to organize together with the community, with the schools, with law enforcement, with so many organizations. And so let's talk a little bit about that, because as somebody who, watches you and all of the things that you do to really push the positive message of prevention, I find it astounding that, when we have tragedy and tragedy hits, and if you're a human being at some point in life, tragedy will hit in various ways, but just losing 2 kids to this opioid epidemic from an accidental overdose, and no one would blame you if you would have just put your head under the covers and melted and left it at that. But the fact that you've been able to harness this for good and then begin this foundation, which is now 5 years strong. Tell us a little bit about how that started.
Well, as a parent, we all have dreams for our kids. We all are so excited about what their future holds. And to even think that Nick and Jack's future was gone on that night, just, it still takes my breath away thinking about it, And I think starting the foundation 525, which is actually named after their hockey numbers, Jack was number 5 and Nick was number 25. It was just kind of a way, as me as a parent, continuing that they're still able to make a difference in this world, whether they're here physically or not. We're going to get their message out there, and they're going to still make a difference and change the lives of other people. And I think that's kind of what has, carried us through a lot of this. Our boys, future was cut short, but yet they're still able to do things in this world.
And so when we came together a couple years ago, and Karen was just, Karen, Becky's cousin, is just, she's a ball of energy and she's got a million things going on. She was in our course and she was like, oh my God, my cousin, she's got to be in your course. Can she join? I was like, of course. So she joined our quick and easy book writing course. At that point, had you written your book yet? I can't remember.
No.
Or had you not written anything yet?
No, we did some blogging and things like that, and besides diary writing and stuff like that, nothing formal, but it's like one of those things that is just the seed had been planted, I think a while ago, where somebody had said, you should write a book. And I was like, oh, who me, an author, you and Heather talk about. And that's exactly what I was thinking. I'm like, no. But then when Karen joined your writing group, we were talking and she's like, you really should join this. And I'm like, well, maybe I'll just join it and see what it's about and see, if it's something that I could do. And that's kind of where then, the wheels started churning, and just kind of, you guys kind of pushed me along and, carried me along. And I'm glad that happened.
Me too. I always feel like there is a guiding hand in the universe, that how could a publisher in Florida, a small boutique publisher, meet someone in Indiana, and they end up doing some great work together. So, I'm always very humbled by that fact, because as someone who likes to know all the details, and I like to have everything mapped out, and I like to know what's coming next, sometimes you just have to relax into like, I don't know what's next. I don't know who I'm going to meet. I don't know what books we're supposed to publish, but they will come. And so as we started getting together this manuscript, let's talk a little bit about how it developed and how you determined, what's really unique about this book, because it's meant to be a tool for teens to read. And we went back and forth between your voice and thinking you should write it, right? Or the boys write it. And so how did you, thinking back, really processed that in thinking about what we finally came to, which was Nick and Jack telling their own story.
Yeah, again, it was part of, I still wanted them to be a part of it somehow. And I was trying to find how they could do that. And then just, I don't know, an aha moment or have a conversation with somebody, but we know that kids, they listen to adults, but they don't listen to adults, but kids listen to kids. Kids, get a lot of their information and a lot of the things that they know, they hear or learn from other kids. So I thought, what a great way for them to learn. Nick and Jack's message is then through Nick and Jack. I wanted Nick and Jack to tell their story and to talk about them growing up and the things that they loved and did, because I know there are other kids out there that are exactly like them. And I wanted the kids reading the book to have that buy-in, to feel that connection with Nick and Jack, and then to kind of feel that emotional ache at the end of the book when Nick and Jack are no longer with us, so that ache, hopefully sticks with them, and encourages them to do better and make better choices.
Yeah. And, it was a very powerful shift in the book when at the end you come in with your voice and say that you have to finish the story now. Because as kids, knowing that the parents are the ones who are still there.
Right.
Parents are the ones that are now suffering because of choices that were made.
Mhm.
And for the kids to have that ache and that realization that it doesn't have to be a chronic, addict type usage to experience a tragic, fatality. This was a one-time occurrence that was an absolute
Disaster.
accident. Right.
Yeah.
And so to bring a story to kids who, sometimes kids, and I know I felt that way as a kid, you feel sort of invincible. Like you haven't experienced enough of life yet to see that life is pretty fragile.
Right.
And so, we go bungee jumping. I did that when I was a teenager, things I would
Right.
never do now.
Right. No bungee jumping. Yeah.
No bungee jumping for me. But then you're like, what could happen? Nothing bad's
Right.
gonna happen
You
from
look
that.
at life
It's
differently.
safe.
Yeah. But it's like one of those, I want kids to feel, because I know kids, a lot of their choices they make are a direct result of how they feel about something. And I really wanted to pull at those heartstrings and to pull at those emotional cords so that they know, every choice has a consequence, positive or negative. Let's focus on making those positive choices. And B, if something bad does happen to you, the story still goes on. You're not in it, but look at the aftermath of your choice. Like there are brothers that are left, behind that miss you dearly every day, and parents and friends and other family, and that we live with the rest of our lives with that heartache. So your choices impact not only you but everybody around you.
Yeah. And it's so true. It's, as we were kind of going back and forth with title options and subtitle
Oh my gosh.
options. And
That took
I mean,
forever.
it was so difficult, right?
It was
and I
so
feel like
difficult.
there's, being on this side of the equation as a publisher, it's something I'm getting used to, even though people come and say, here's my title, here's my subtitle. I say, yeah, maybe.
Yeah,
maybe.
it's hard because I knew this story was so important to me to get everything, every detail just right, because I was doing this for them. It's kind of like I'm doing this out of love, for them.
Yeah.
Then I didn't want it to not be perfect, and that's why the title, oh my gosh, we struggled. I don't even want to, I'm embarrassed to say how many years. It seemed like forever, but because I wanted it to be the perfect thing, the perfect choice, my choice to be the perfect choice,
Yeah.
for that.
And
So
I
it's
really
so
think
hard.
it is. I really think, when we went through some of the options, it was more reflective of maybe the boys. But as we were thinking about the kids whose lives we still want to touch, we really, your message really is about one choice. It's like everything comes down to 10 seconds and one choice. Like in a split second, choices you make matter.
Yeah.
And so that's where I think that marrying that one choice title with how 10 seconds can change your life was kind of the perfect balance, because you didn't want to focus on just the negative choices, but positive choices as well,
Right.
can impact you. So I think that I think you did an excellent job picking the perfect title and subtitle.
Well, thank you. You guys helped a heck of a lot. So
We're we're
I
supporting acts.
yeah, but I again, like you say, how we met and how, like I'm in Indiana, you're in Florida. I mean, I think everything kind of falls into place the way it's supposed to be. And I'm just so thankful that our paths crossed, because I
Me
think it
too.
was a win-win. So it was good.
Definitely. So let's talk a little bit about the book design and the book launch, because that's, writing the manuscript and getting the title and subtitle is like such a process of like pouring your heart out onto paper and really working with, the words and putting the pieces together. And once we got to that point, and there were some changes and changing back, and, there's lots of, it's like playing ping pong back and forth, back and forth. And then we got to the point where we're like, okay, we've got the story done. We've got the table of contents where, Nick and Jack rotate back and forth, telling different parts of the story in years, 5-year increments. We have the graduation day. We have Becky's voice coming in there. And then we decided to include a photo book, which I think added so much to the reality of the story.
I really wanted to have every element in this book that could potentially grab the interest of any kid. And I know I'm a visual person, and I connect better with a story when I see who is being talked about. And so I thought, there's probably kids out there. I love to look at pictures of, people and their families and things. And I just really wanted to add that. It was just important to me to add that, Nick and Jack's, because that was part of their lives.
I think it's beautiful, because you read the story and then you see all the pictures, and then we have some letters. Let's talk about the letters.
Yeah, those letters were really hard. To read through, and just to see how, that these were boys that were loved by so many people. But I know that again, it goes back to a mom saying that I wanted to include letters from their friends so that kids reading this book could understand that Nick and Jack's death didn't just affect them, it affected their community, their village of people. And so I reached out to some of their closer friends, and we got some letters that we put in the book, which I've had a lot of feedback related to those letters. And so I know it's doing exactly what we wanted it to do. It's really hitting the mark with some of these kids that are reading the book. It's really very impactful.
Really impactful. And then, to kind of finish the book with a resources section, being the nurse educator and the teacher that you are, and wanting to focus on really, this is not just a tragic story, which it is, but this is something that you can now use to say, oh, I didn't know this or that or whatever. I didn't feel comfortable talking to my parents, or they didn't have the right information. Maybe they're trying to get their information from TikTok or Snapchat,
right.
Like the information our kids get isn't always reliable.
Right.
And they don't necessarily know where to go to get reliable information. And so Becky really wanted to include a resources section that has all of the different types of drugs, what they do, what the warnings are, what emojis kids use to talk about them, and really keep it current so that, kids weren't caught off guard because they didn't know.
Well, and it started, this was hard to do because constant drug trends are changing all the time. But I really wanted to put, something quick about each drug. on here, and that, so that they would know what stuff was. But B, I do a lot of Narcan training, and I was doing some with some students. And, I'm talking about how to give Narcan and, what it is. And, it's an opioid reversal drug. And a lot of the kids were looking back at me with blank stares. And I remember saying, okay, how many of you guys know what an opioid is? Because, we all hear it. We all hear that word, and nobody raised their hand. And I'm like, okay, here I'm assuming this group of 30 kids know what an opioid is, because we use that language all the time, and none of them, they've all heard it, but they didn't know exactly what it was. So I thought, you know what, I want to put that in the book as a breakdown, like, this is what an opioid is. This is what an opioid does to your body when you ingest it. This is, the warning signs of an overdose. Or marijuana. This is what marijuana is. This is the different forms it can come in. This is what it does to your body. I just wanted to put quick things in there so that kids know, because I think we as parents do a lot of assuming that our kids know what stuff is when they really might not. And so I just wanted to have factual stuff in the book so that they could just read, oh, it does mess with your brain, or, oh, yes, I've seen that emoji before, or now I know what that is, just so that kids had the facts so that they could make informed choices about different substances, different choices about anything.
It's really, I think, such a crucial part of the book, because then it gives kids knowledge to be able to move forward and make good choices. And that's really the underlying reason of why you did this whole book is, and I've heard you say before, when you're in front of kids, you always picture that there's a Nick and a Jack out there.
I do, because I know that, or I hope that if Nick and Jack were to have heard their story, a story like theirs, in an auditorium somewhere at a school or anywhere, that they would have felt those heartstrings pull, and they would have made a better choice that night. So I picture, when I'm up talking to students, I know that there's a Nick or a Jack out there in that crowd. And that's what my focus is. I want them to hear this message so that they make better choices. Yeah. And maybe they'll go tell a friend, or they'll go home and start a conversation with their parent, about, this is what we heard today. And, maybe, good conversations are started because of that. That's what our hope is.
It all starts with that, right? And
yeah,
just, having those conversations, talking about it, normalizing the conversations that are difficult, I think is hard for parents at times. And, one of the things that Becky also did, she just really put so much thought into this book. And that's why I wanted to kind of cover all the various aspects, because it's easy to think that when you write a book, you're just writing a book, right? Here's a manuscript, but the manuscript is one thing. But one of the things that we like to do here is to think through the whole thing. Like, what is this book really going to do? When it's the first question I ask people when they come to talk to me as a publisher about, I have a book idea, or people have told me I should write a book. And I say, okay, well, assuming you know nothing about publishing or writing a book, just set all that aside. If you were able to overcome all those hurdles and you're holding the book in your hand right now, what is the book doing for you? Because you have to see a vision for why even go through all the trouble, right?
Right.
And so the book is not just telling Nick and Jack's story. You've included all these other features. And then in the very front, to incorporate the 525 Foundation, you wanted to include some free downloadable resources, which I thought was really beautiful, because as you said earlier, stuff changes so much. Mm-hmm. New information, Becky is like this reservoir for new information. She's always getting it. She's like on the front lines of a lot of these conversations. Yeah. She gets invited to a lot of events where there's just really high level discussions about cutting edge things that are showing up with, in first responders and in schools and all this stuff. So she really didn't want the reader to just like read the book, but if they could come to the website and get the free conversation starter guide and get, what else did we include in there?
Teachers, where that's
Teacher
almost
resources.
done. We wanted to have a teacher resource, where teachers could include this in their classrooms, read the story and then make it easy for them to have a discussion with their class. We know that our book hits several of the national health and education standards. Then we wanted to help teachers make that connection.
So I think that's beautiful, because as a teacher, you're paying it forward to kind of help. Teachers today are so busy. They have so much on their plate, and we always have to think about those curriculum standards that they're measured by, that they need to meet. And so to basically say, here's how this book meets these standards, here's how you can use it in your classroom, here are the questions you can ask, here are the conversations you can start, here is an essay. We talked about possibly an essay contest in the future that students could participate in. But all of that's free at the website, and that's right up front in the book. She tells people, go to the website, get this free information, and in that way she can stay in the conversation with the reader and continue to give them the most current information. Because a book, once it's done, it's signed, sealed, delivered, it's out the door. But with emails and with social media, which she does such a great job with, she's able to just keep pumping out all that positive information that's going to help kids continue to make good choices. So
and stay in the forefront of what's going on. But yeah, it was very important to me to not only write a book that people could read about Nick and Jack, and I didn't want them just to go, oh my gosh, wow, that was an awful story, and then put the book away. I wanted them to be able to go the next step, which is, what can I do? What are my action steps moving forward? And we tried to lay it out in the book. For teens, this is what you can do. For parents, this is what you can do. Have a conversation. Oh, you don't know how to start a conversation? Here's how you start a conversation with your child. We want to make prevention easy. We want to make conversations easy with parents, to have it with their kids, or kids to have a conversation with their parents, because we know that sometimes that's not always easy for a child to come to their parents and start a conversation about a difficult topic, so we want to try to make it easy for everybody.
Yeah. And you've done that. So my hat's off to you.
Well, thank you.
You really did an awesome job. Her book launch was a huge success. Tons of online sales, tons of excited people. You've got a ton of Amazon reviews already. Last I checked, it was like close to 100 Amazon reviews already.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah. We're just so grateful that it has been accepted, and it's been all positive. So, because, you put your heart out there, this is your story, and it's like, oh my goodness, but the response has been incredible. And if we can just make a difference in one person, one Nick or one Jack, then it was all worth it.
100%. And, as we wrap up here, one of the things that I like to do is direct people where to go. First of all, they can buy the book on your website. They can buy the book through Amazon. Are they going to Becky Savage or to 525?
They can go either one. We do have beckysavage.com or 525foundation.org that they can go to. The book links are on both. And a lot of the educational material is on 525 Foundation. We have lots of event information, different things like that on there. Or Amazon, Barnes and Noble, things like that. They can find it on that link as well.
That's perfect. And we have just talked a little bit about school assemblies. I will tell you that I'm going to put a link in the show notes. Becky flew down here for our first TEDx style speaker event. She was one of our featured speakers and gave a presentation about her Nick and Jack story. And so I want to make sure that you can see her presenting on stage in front of, a few hundred people. And she dives a lot more into the actual personal side of the story, which we didn't get too much into today, but I want to get you over there to see that as well. But as far as school assemblies, let's talk just for a minute about that, because Becky has traveled all over the place presenting in front of students. And, they say for most people, one of the biggest fears is public speaking, right? But I can't imagine public speaking in front of a bunch of teenagers.
Yeah.
So you
Actually-
are superwoman.
It's intimidating, but again, I go back to, I love working with students, and that, I'm still able to do that. And this, flip side, I'm still able to talk to students and educate students. But I have never been in front of a crowd that has been disrespectful. Usually when I start talking about Nick and Jack's story, you can literally hear a pin drop. The kids are so engaged, which is what I want them. I want them to feel connected. And yeah, it's been great. I never, again, wanted to be a public speaker. Never thought that would happen. But it has, and it's okay. It's okay.
And you
It's not bad.
are, you do an excellent job. So I want to thank you so much for
Thank
being
you.
on today. Please check the show notes for all the ways to get in touch with Becky, to get the conversation starters, to get the book One Choice. Make sure you leave an Amazon review, and that you follow 525 Foundation on all those social platforms and stay connected. It's so important because this work really is saving lives. And that's what really makes me excited, is that, the mission at O'Leary Publishing is to publish books that raise the global consciousness. And this book is exactly what we do. Is like, we want the world to be a better place because of the books we publish. So I want to just say thank you for trusting us with your boys and with your story, and for being part of our O'Leary Publishing family. We really adore you.
Well, the feeling is mutual. And like I said, I'm forever grateful for you and your team. Been incredible. Thank you.
All right, everyone, have a great day and check the show notes, and we'll be back with you next time for another episode of I'm Booked. Have a great day.
So this has been another episode of the I'm Booked podcast. I'm April O'Leary signing off. Be sure to hop on over to o'learypublishing.com to start your author adventure and see what writing a book could do for you in your profession, in your career, and what doors it might open. We thank our guests for being a part of the show today, and be sure to subscribe to podcasts here on YouTube. We look forward to serving you and helping you get your book out into the world.